Hi everyone, this is Naren Sai with MS. I am Naren, and welcome to a Soulful Saturday. And I hope you're having a great weekend, and so hopefully you're ready for a little bit of soulful conversation with me. So before I get started, I do want to give a small correction for something I said yesterday. My third story yesterday was about a lady named Carlene Roy, and I mispronounced her name as Kathleen Roy for being a person who was diagnosed with MS back in 2019. And in October 2025, she ran a half marathon. So I actually ended up reading the entire article earlier today because usually when I am collecting stories or reading through stories for my Friday Findings episode, I usually just skim them. Um, and so as a result, I clearly didn't read her name properly, but of course did end up reading the article, and it is of course a great read. And she does mention a lot of things that I definitely try to um, you know inculcate in myself in terms of staying active, being upbeat, and doing everything possible to try and ensure that I don't let thoughts in here ruin the rest of the day, right? So that I can remain upbeat and positive. But given that, I did make a mistake, and this is what I wanted to talk about, this Saturday, or this Soulful Saturday, which was predominantly focused on, what do you do when you make a mistake, um, you know, either in terms of helping out another person, helping out a group of people, or even to yourself, right? I mean, a lot of times, you know, definitely I know I'm no stranger to making mistakes, and definitely do make a lot of them all the time. And I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this more than once. So you definitely are probably now thinking like, how many mistakes this guy make, on a daily basis, or a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, or even a yearly basis. And let me tell you, I have tried at whichever frequency to measure the number of mistakes I made, and um, honestly, I think I've lost count given any sort of frequency or any sort of time that I set for myself. So honestly, it's pretty hard for me to even say how many mistakes I make. But the question really becomes, how do you uh, pretty much correct yourself, or how do you get out of that mistake? So obviously the one thing I have to do is apologize. I think uh, you know apologizing or saying sorry is definitely one of my um, most used words. At least it's definitely in like the top 10, if not the top 5 or top 3 um, of the words I use on a given day. But of course, that is just admitting guilt, or admitting that you've made a mistake, and so you're apologizing for that. But what do you do apart from that, right? And I did want to discuss that because I definitely do want your inputs, your insights on how do you progress further than saying just sorry, right? Usually I like to think that I generally try to put it into practice, that whichever mistake I make definitely stays very fresh in in my brain. I mean, it might be like a millennial brain talking, where every mistake you make, from the smallest of the mistakes to you know things that can probably change lives, definitely change you, um, like fresh on the top of my head, because I usually revisit it um, time and time again. Definitely, and every time I visit it, I usually look at how I could have made it just a little bit better or improved it, and definitely try to make that one promise to myself that going forward, at least this mistake will not be made, right? A lot of times, or at least I want to say many times, I'd say it's at least higher than 50% that I don't make the same mistake again. But there is always the chance that that mistake will be made again. And so what happens then, right? I generally, one thing I try to do is I try to write it down somewhere, right? Be it a piece of paper, be it in a journal whenever I have a journal, be it on the notes app on my phone, which I'm using right now to deliver this message, or anywhere else. But just write it out in some form of physical form, right? That's why I always say writing it down is much better. But now that I'm generally pretty bad at holding a pen, and trust me, I am trying to get back to holding a pen, right? This is definitely one of the ways that I'm trying to do it. And despite it looking still on the easier side, it is definitely much harder to press this. But I'm trying to strengthen it so that I can still use my writing muscles to write out these kinds of messages to myself, so that it becomes a little more ingrained into my memory. But of course, sometimes I keep a mental note of it. Of course, I always have that very very lived in experience that I try to remember time and time again, especially when I'm in a quiet place, when I'm definitely just alone with my thoughts, so that I pretty much promise to myself that I'm not going to make that mistake. But of course, um, as they say, to err is human, to forgive divine. So sure, maybe I will be forgiven for the mistakes I make, especially when I make it in helping out someone else, or when it is intended for someone else. But more so than that, I would say that you know um, at what point do you stop being hard on yourself for a certain mistake or a certain error you've made? Do put your um, thoughts, please put your inputs, your insights, and share them, so that we can get the conversation started. And definitely, and like I said, as a millennial who generally does think about every single mistake I've ever made throughout my life, right? Be it that it was just an honest mistake, to being ignorant, to being this or that, any form of you know being wrong. um, you know it will probably play in my head for the rest of my life. So definitely getting your inputs, getting your insights would be very helpful in me finding other ways to get around it, or me to you know correct myself in a better way for the future. And with that message, I do hope that you do give your insights, that you do give your inputs, and we do definitely have a conversation so that, I can get a few new thoughts or new ideas about how to, approach making a mistake in the future. And with that said, like I, um, like I do with every day, I hope your day is going very well. I hope your weekend is going very well. And with that said, this is Naren Sai with MS. I am Naren, and here's wishing you a good night and sweet dreams.